Hello everyone, and today we are continuing on with the functions and their positions. Today we're going to be doing introverted intuition. Ooh, the mysterious function. Because no one can explain it apparently, on the internet at least. But it's really, I don't think it's that confusing. So let's just get started. For dominant NI, these people tend to notice underlying patterns between events and their causes and effects through time. NI is basically linear time. They see the causes in the past and effects in the future, consequences. That's why I call NI the predictor. And they tend to perceive all conceptual understandings as interconnected. This is very important. It's very important. A lot of people think, oh, I have an inkling about something. I must have dominant NI. It's like, how's it connected to your meaning of life? How's it connected to this thing you did yesterday? How's it going to connect to the thing you're going to do tomorrow? And they're like, I don't know. Yeah, you don't have dominant NI. I ask my clients, this list of 20 questions. Some people with dominant NI, they link every question back to one thing. And some people, every question becomes a question about everything. Like you ask them something specific, like what's your favorite movie? Suddenly they're talking about their whole life. So everything is interconnected. This is because their internal perceptual structure is not, like SIs, like nitty-gritty compartmentalized. Everything's intuitive and it's internal. How do you even keep intuitive, abstract things inside? Like a big hodgepodge, I suppose. Like most people with NI, they say that they can't really describe it. It's like something very visual and intangible. So yeah, everything's connected. All right, moving on to the auxiliary NI. These people, they tend to take conscious effort to notice these underlying patterns between events that have happened over time. So they can do it, but they have to sit down and do it. They have to stop doing their constant JESE stuff and introspect a little bit. Now, people have different degree of auxiliary NI strength, but generally it's not something that totally comes naturally. They have to actually have an intent. And usually this intent is mirroring their dominant functions. Like the ENTJs are gonna be more caring about things, how things will unfold in the future. And for the ENFJs, it's more gonna be about people, social systems. When the use of NI is gonna help their extroverted judging function, be that TE or FE, that's when they're gonna use it the most. Yeah, auxiliary as a helper to the dominant. Not everything is interconnected for the auxiliary NI user. It's only the things that are directly affecting their FE or TE. They're only going to use the effort to connect those things that's actually going to help them in the external world. They're not just going to sit around and connect everything to everything like an INFJ would. All right, tertiary. These people, they may not notice the bulk of underlying patterns between events, nor the causes and effects of things, but they tend to value the depth of ideas. They tend to value abstract perception and a sure-footed vision of the future. So I don't know if you've seen some ISFP artists who have tertiary NI. They're very thematic. Their art is very, if an INFP does visual art, I do that sometimes. There's a sketch there, there's a watercolor there, there's a painting there. It's not just about mediums, oh, this is the anime style, this is impressionistic. But ISFPs, everything just seems to be fit together so well. It's just one style, or sometimes, their whole body of work is that one kind of aesthetic or even one kind of color palette theme. Yeah, now you guys remember my friend Jackie, the ISTP, who said, I am passionate about one thing, and that is graphic design. So yeah, they're very consciously valuing that tunnel vision that NI is known for when it comes to their life, when it comes to their future. When it comes to little things like hobbies, yeah, their SE, they'll have a ton of different things that they do. So they tend to be adept at observing the depth of abstract underpinnings of a topic. This is why a lot of ISFPs also think they're INFJs. A lot of people with tertiary NI are so sure that they're intuitives. I've come across so many people like this. It's yes, your intuition is good. It doesn't mean that you're gonna be in on the stupid MBTI 4-letter dichotomy, but your in is good. What helps with that is their very complex internal evaluative structure, the FI or TI. So that's actually going to bring even more weight to the NI. Like the NI is going to combine with the FI or TI, and it's all going to seem very complex, but really the JI is making the NI look a little more substantial than it actually is. However, their sensorily exploratory nature tends to be more externally evident than their depth of intuition. So they do have depth of intuition, but their SE is apparent. And most of these people also say, oh, I can't be SE because I'm sometimes clumsy. Well, everyone's sometimes clumsy, but also it doesn't help that, you have to consciously activate your SE. Meanwhile, your NI is kind of churning in the background all the time. All right, moving on to inferior. So these people may not notice the underlying patterns or the cause and effects of things. What that means is basically each sensory thing, each physical manifestation of thing is a separate thing. They tend to experience everything as they are. In that sense, they don't read into it as much. So only by reading into it can you connect things to each other. So they tend to not do that. And this can lead to reckless action without analyzing the consequences, without really worrying about the future, especially when the sensory pull is too great. So that's no surprise. We all know some ESP who has done something kind of like that. I mean, they're known for being kind of daredevil-like, and that all fits. But they may overcompensate for their lack of an eye by doubling down on a few conceptual explanations they do see or they have heard about. For example, clinging to a conspiracy theory or religion. Not that those two are equal. Oh god, not that religion is inferior NI, but just something cohesive that explains everything about everything. They tend to be kind of attracted to that. And yes, this is also why they're attracted to dominant NI users. But that's a different story. Alright, moving on to the fifth position, or people with dominant NE. So these people, they do notice underlying patterns between events and their causes and effects, but they tend to prefer to ignore that for the sake of proliferating present conceptual possibilities. Leading some to see them as ungrounded and fanciful. So basically, they may have some sort of inkling about how things are connected. They might have an inkling about if I do this, this thing will happen in the future. But they ignore that and they think, well, that could happen, but these 20 other things could happen, so might as well try it, or might as well not try it because 20 doom and gloom scenarios, despite the most likely scenario being nothing's going to go wrong if you go on that roller coaster. It's really a preference, not an ability, right? But that's true for any position. So believing too much in this one pattern, even though it's the most obvious one, is going to limit which patterns are possible in the present. And that's why they ignore that for the sake of NE. They tend to dislike what they perceive to be the limitation of only entertaining ideas that are deemed likely or practical. Alright, moving on to the sixth lot, or people with auxiliary NE, or me. So we can notice underlying patterns between events as well. Woo, their causes and effects through time. But they often use this ability to their advantage, whether that's to make better decisions using their inner framework or to further inform their internal storehouse of sensory information. So this is kind of big. I think it's not the NI that we're picking up on, it's the SI. We also have that whole 50 things could happen because my NE said so. But unlike the ENFPs and ENTPs, our SI is a bit higher, so it's going to be okay, remember that in the past, 4 out of 5 times this happened. So it's kind of a mock NI. So I think higher SI can just rein in the NE a little bit, making it seem a little bit like NI. So they can be quite adept at perceiving the likely consequences of actions through a combination of cognitive functions. But ultimately, when they're viewing ideas, abstract ideas, they prioritize the multiplicity of perspectives and possibilities rather than sticking to that one most likely or most comprehensive one. Now, moving on to the seventh slot, or people with tertiary NE. This is kind of an interesting one. I actually talked to Alan about it. He was like, yes, that's me. So I hope you guys relate to this and that it's not just him. They may not notice underlying patterns between events, nor their causes and effects, even those that have presented themselves repeatedly, especially when they're sifting through past sensory data, which leads some people to see them as very literal. I feel like when I get upset, I think maybe it's even worse when it's the NI about the J function that you're not oriented towards. So he's ESTJ. I think his NI is worse when it comes to dealing with future emotional responses of people, whereas the ESFJ might do worse when it comes to like future predictions of, you know, more logical structures, more how things will unfold rather than how people. I think when I get upset, it's usually like there is a pattern to like when I get sad or whatever, but it seems like no matter how many times I do, like he doesn't know why. Honestly, I think that maybe when I say it, it sounds frustrating, but I love it. It's like I don't like people to know why I feel something unless I tell them directly. So him being not able to like decipher why is kind of perfect, because like then I can choose when to tell him. I always tell him, by the way, but it feels nice that that is my choice, rather than, you know, if it's like an INFJ, they'll just know why I feel a certain way without, you know, my consent or whatever. It's like, oh. Anyway, these people, they also tend to have trouble staying at the conceptual depth of a topic. Instead, they tend to drift to the shallows of a tangential topic, leading some people to see them as cursory. Yeah, if you want to delve deeper into a concept, just drill the concept deeper. They'll probably give you a ton of past examples of that concept, which is not really deepening the concept. It's bringing a bunch of SI to the concept, right? It's substantiating it, but it's not deepening it. And the other tendency is that they're gonna hop over here to a topic that's related and stay kind of above, and also not delve lower. And I think that's also true. All right, moving on to the 8th slot, or people with inferior Ne. So these people also do not really notice the underlying patterns between events and their causes and effects, but they seem to make up for it through their thorough and encyclopedic internal storehouse of concrete information, so perhaps prompting them to display solid knowledge of certain topics. This makes some people see them as intelligent and even deep. And upon first glance, it can kind of look similar. Say like an INFJ and an ISFJ are talking about psychology. I think sometimes the ISFJ is going to look a lot more like academically intelligent than the INFJ, because the INFJ is probably going to speak mostly in vague terms. It's going to get broader and broader. The ISFJ is going to get more and more specific. It's going to be like, the professor blank said blank in year blank. And it's going to be like, wow, this person knows so much. But it's a different process. So they do not perceive the conceptual depth of a topic, but its myriad concrete fragments. So they substantiate every topic, but they don't expand the topic in terms of deepening it. They just attach a bunch of like sensory examples to it. And furthermore, they can relate these sensory fragments to cursory ideas with their extroverted intuition. So sometimes, you know, they'll be talking about 5 sensory examples and boom, like some random idea comes out. So this can actually make them look intuitive. So mistyping between ISFJs and ISTJs and the INJs is fairly common. All right, that is it for today. I hope this video series has been helpful. Oh, it's not done yet. I still have to do NE and SI. I've gotten people saying that it's like helped them, so hopefully this helps you like figure out what your type is. But if you are still unsure, I do have a typing service on my website that you can check out. And as always, thank you so much for watching and have a great day, and I'll see you next time.